All right. Well, welcome to Cedar Rock. I have with me Thomas Hermanson, and he's been with us here at Cedar Rock for a couple of months, a handful of months. He was baptized with us back in June or July, yeah, this year. And so with Testimony Tuesday, we're asking people, and I'm going to ask Thomas to share with us also. Number one, where God has been at work in his life, and to share just a testimony of where God is at work, but also what brought you to Cedar Rock.
Of course, thanks for having me. I guess I should start off by saying that I grew up in a Christian household, so as far down as I can remember up until now, I've always been exposed to the Christian beliefs and traditions, and that Jesus was my Lord and Savior, and that He died on the cross for me. But when I was younger, I guess I feel like my brain didn't have the capacity to fully understand those messages, so I kind of took it as I'm saved, great news, but that's it. That's all that comes with it, right? And that maybe I would be saved through my parents' faith or something like that. But I just turned 20 a few days ago, and up until I was 18, halfway through 18, almost 19, so a year or two ago, I would call myself a Christian because I grew up in the Christian household, but I would just be living not like I wouldn't be living like a Christian. I was so far away from it. Basically living by the devil's lies and not Jesus's truths. So eventually I kind of got convicted at 18 and a half, 19 years old, somewhere around there, that I wasn't doing enough, and that, maybe I don't fully understand it the way I should. And with, TikTok being popular and stuff like that, and my generation always sucked into social media and stuff like that, I'm just scrolling through TikTok and these social medias, and I start to get these these Christian TikToks and these videos that are spreading the gospel and all of this, and I'm kind of learning things about myself that I wasn't aware of. And it drove me to, open my Bible more and pray about these things more, and fully understand the reason I'm a Christian, and not just because my parents are, and that's when a lot of things started to change. I started to, change my ways of living and the things that I was doing, my habitual sins that I back then I just thought it was everyday activity that I would do, or, all this and that. And then I fully understood and learned that these things that I'm doing are wrong, and that I shouldn't be doing them. It's actually hurting my faith. Basically, I caught myself in this very lukewarm state where I wasn't on fire, I wasn't doing anything to grow my faith, but I would sit back, live my life the way I wanted to, and continue to call myself a Christian to other people. So basically,
it's a powerful place for a person to reach, is where they hear that there's power in that faith, and you're not experiencing it.
Yeah.
Something's missing, something's off.
Yeah, so I was just through all these videos that I was seeing on my For You page of just these crazy testimonies and these wild sermons and all these people who are on fire, and I was just thinking my life looks nothing like that, not to mention I haven't even really experienced anything like that. So I just kind of started for myself and started reading and praying and doing my best to pick up my cross and follow Jesus. And my sister Hillary was a big help with that. She, kind of pointed me to where I needed to start in the Bible and help me understand a little bit more, and, help me with my faith. And eventually, I was sitting there one night in my room, and I had just finished reading, I was reading the book of Luke. I was reading one of the Gospels, and I just finished up reading, and I was kind of just sitting there in my head. I wasn't necessarily praying, but I was just sitting there and kind of just feeling the presence of God. I was just being silent, sitting there listening. So I guess a form of praying or meditation. And I was just thinking I believe I was baptized as soon as a baby, as a child. But to me, that wasn't my decision. It was just kind of my parents' decision. I'm glad that I was, but at the same time, I felt like it had to be a me decision. And I was sitting there and I was thinking, and I kind of had this thought. It wasn't like a very strong thought or like of like anything verbal. I just kind of thought like, God, if you would like me to get rebaptized, let it be known, because I don't want to just like do it out of my own. I don't know if I was ready yet, or if I didn't know if any of that. So I just kind of said, yeah, let it be known if you want me to be baptized again. And then literally less than a week later, Hillary called me and she's like, hey, your niece is getting baptized this week. Do you want to come to Cedar Rock and get baptized? And I was like, wow, that's kind of incredible. So I took that as, yeah, he does want me to get rebaptized as my own decision, my own choice. So I said, yeah. And then that's kind of how I got led here, is my sister just asking me after I prayed a prayer, asking God, if you want me to get baptized again, or if you think it's, smart for me to get baptized under my own choice, then let it be known. And then less than a week later, I had an opportunity to, and I was still a little bit nervous, like, am I ready? Like, should I do this? Blah, blah, blah. And then I just thought, like obviously, I prayed it and it happened. I need to continue to obey that. I need to follow that.
Yeah, God answered your prayer, right? You asked him to speak to you and he did.
Yep. And now, within the last year and a half, because before, like I said, I grew up in a Christian household, so I always like call myself Christian, but I never like really even had a faith. I kind of just like knew it to be true, but didn't live my life like it was true. So I got into some pretty, I guess, dark places in my teenage years with alcohol and drugs, and just hanging around wrong crowds and doing things that, at the time I thought were like irreversible damage. But eventually, as I started attempting to get closer, I started getting those convictions. I started thinking like, maybe I shouldn't go out 2 nights a week to go partying with my friends and do all these things that I know now are bad for my faith. So yeah, ever since then, I get convicted and do my best to follow and obey that conviction. And even if it's the smallest little thing in my heart that like that might be wrong, I'm just like, I should probably stay away from that then. So I'm definitely seeing God work in my life through these small areas where back then a year ago I would have thought nothing of it, like absolutely nothing of it. And now it's like sometimes I get convicted of stuff that doesn't make sense to be convicted of. It's like, I don't know, it's like, God, is this really you telling me that I should quit doing this or I should quit doing this?
Sure.
Because it's like, it seems a little bit silly, but then I think about it and it's like, it's all for the betterment and glory of God. So even if it seems silly at the moment, maybe if I obey that, even if it was maybe if it wasn't a conviction, or if it was just like a silly thought, like maybe you should stop doing that, or maybe it's okay to do that or whatever, I'll still obey it. And then later down the line, usually 9 times out of 10, it's revealed to me why I had to stop doing that. Like at the time, it's like, I don't understand this, but I'm going to do it anyway. And then later I'm like, oh, okay, that's why I had to quit doing that or whatever. So,
and that's relationship, and that's a lot of what we do talk about here, is that God calls us into relationship, and it's great. And we've seen you already. We have a Tuesday night study and you've been involved with that for a little bit now. And I've seen Thomas, how he is just, excited about and on fire for God, and which is really, really incredible, because that's the way it's supposed to be. It's the way it's intended to be. But also, like you said, Ben, we hear from God, and many people, they just shut it down, where they're like, oh, that can't be God. It's just, like you said, too weird. It's just, that's petty, or it's just too weird. And it's not only, I mean, it is obedience, but it's more of surrender, of listening and following. It's not legalistic, but it is, if we want to go deeper with them, then we do need to take a step with them. And if we're just writing them off as nothing, then it's never going to grow. But yet, as you're doing this, you're seeing that, like you said, that, well, this is why. And it might not be the case, like every person needs to do exactly what it was that he was leading you in, but that's relationship. And again, like you said, he reveals a lot of times later why those things that he was guiding and directing, whether to do this or don't do this or whatever. And so, yeah, as God tells us, he says, if you seek me with all of your heart, you will find me. And it sounds like that's exactly what's happening with you.
Yeah. So as I read, as I read and learn and are in the community more and do better to fully understand and grasp, the word and interpret it the best way I can. There's a lot of things that I hear from the Bible, and I try my best to, if it's from the Bible, I believe it and I want to follow it. But there's, a lot of things in today's world that are not, directly listed in the Bible. They're disputable matters, as some people call them. And these are just things that I pray for discernment over, because there are a lot of things in my life that it's not directly listed in the Bible, because these were thousands of years ago, and now today they're irrelevant, or they're relevant, sorry, and they're a big part in the
Culture.
the culture. There it is. Big part of the culture, and it's just like sometimes I have struggled discerning, what's good for me and what's not, and even if it doesn't seem evil right off the gate, it still could be leading you to a path where you're drifting away from God, or you're taking the wrong path, or whatever. So yeah, a lot of these things that I'm experiencing and learning, it's definitely a battle. It's definitely, there's spiritual warfare happening. But a lot of the time when I do find out something that I'm doing is wrong, or I do something wrong deliberately, even though I know it's wrong, right afterward, I just get the conviction, like, okay, well, you did it. It's not the end of the world. You knew you weren't supposed to, but there is forgiveness for you there. And even though that's true, don't just use that as a ticket to do it again. But usually I sit there and I contemplate, and then when something like that happens, when the same situation happens again in the future, I sit there and I think, well, what did I learn last time? I really wanted to in the moment, I did it, and then it felt good in the moment, but then later, I just, like, 20 minutes later, I'm just sitting there thinking, like, why did I do that anyway? Whatever.
Yeah.
And it's just a process.
It's relationship.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's relationship. And that's the way it is with everybody. And whether it be a boyfriend, girlfriend, a spouse, or whatever the case is, even just friends, that's what happens is the relationship grows. And sometimes there's tension, but a lot, especially with God, there's always going to be love. Even in the places that he convicts us, it's still lovingly and encouraging. And he's taking us somewhere. And it's just exciting to watch what God is doing in you. And we're glad to have you here. And thank you for sharing your testimony with us.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I'm glad to be here, and it was a great time, and I'm just happy to be able to, express what's going on in my life to help other people maybe get closer, and use me as an example of, how I'm not special. Every regular day, everyday people, it happens all the time where they get convicted and brought closer to Jesus. So I'm even seeing it in my life with people who had never thought about it before, and now they're showing signs of, interest in the gospel and the truth.
Stuff's spreading then.
Of course.
It's contagious. Yeah, it's exciting. Well, thank you for being with us here. And we just want to let you know that something new is happening here at Cedar Rock.